some more minutes. It'd be really cool to see Pat McCaw get some more minutes too, because he did really well in his limited time going up against his old team, fighting for that three-peat, you know, that personal three-peat.
I mean, good for him. I don't agree. He had a couple of good minutes, but this is a goddamn NBA Finals. I don't understand why Patrick McCaw was getting minutes. He did not play, other than garbage time, I don't think he played at all in the playoffs. And then now you're like, well, let's put him in a close game in the NBA Finals. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, shoot. I would take him over Jody Meeks. So I'm content with just Jody.
Maybe Nick Nurse was like going for maybe he'll have a revenge game.
Exactly. He was just like, hey, I'm sure you know these guys.
NBA Finals Patrick McCaw revenge game. That's not a story you expected to hear.
It's a story that nobody's talking about. We need to get the word out.
Addition by subtraction is an interesting concept. Removing a person from a group, or why dance around it, a player from a team, can actually make the team better. Now, sometimes it's really not that interesting of a case. It's really just obvious. At this point, it makes sense to try and get Dwight Howard off of your team. But in some cases, it's really surprising. In the 90s, there was this thing called the Patrick Ewing effect. Patrick was one of the best big men in the league in the 90s, as well as a top 10 player for most of the 90s, but the New York Knicks would consistently play better when he was on the sidelines, because the Knicks would rely way too much on Ewing, so whenever he was out, everyone was forced to pick up their games. The best example of this came in the 99 playoffs after Ewing tore his Achilles, an injury that essentially ended his career besides for a few sad years after. It seemed like the Knicks were doomed to fail in the second round versus the Pacers, but the Knicks would win 3 out of the next 4 games and eventually make it to the finals as an 8th seed. The man who coined the phrase the Patrick Ewing effect, Dave Carrilli, said that Ewing's injury was the best thing that could happen to the Knicks. Now that was the 90s. The modern example of that to many people would be Kevin Durant for the Golden State Warriors. There is this common opinion that the Warriors are a better team when Kevin Durant is not playing. And yes, it is a common narrative. I can't tell you how many times I've made a video attacking a narrative and some dumbass in the comments was like, no one's talking about this. No, just because you haven't heard someone talk about it doesn't mean it's not being talked about. B-Ball Breakdown, for example, has made some videos discussing this idea. So now to many people there is the Kevin Durant theory similar to the Patrick Ewing theory. But I don't agree that the Warriors are better without Kevin Durant, and I'd like to discuss why.
Rebound. Save. Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
The idea that the Warriors are a better team without Kevin Durant has existed for a good while, but it's been particularly popular in this year's playoffs. Ever since Durant went down with an injury versus the Houston Rockets, the Warriors closed out the Rockets, swept the Portland Trail Blazers, who had a lot of momentum, and they just stole Game 2 on the Raptors' home court. And in Game 2 in particular, in the second half, the Warriors scored 22 baskets, with all 22 of them being assisted on. But besides for that, there aren't really a lot of stats that I can use to point to the Warriors being better without Durant. I don't really think their record without Durant works against him because their record with him is also unbelievable. If we're all being honest, the Warriors winning is as inevitable as Thanos. Now, you may say this metaphor doesn't work because, spoiler alert, not really, because it was kind of obvious. Thanos loses, but remember, that loss was 1 out of however many fucking million outcomes that Doctor Strange saw, and that's essentially how good the Warriors are. Here's hoping that Toronto is in the endgame. So here's what I really think this boils down to. Steph and Klay play a lot better, or at least feel more impactful on the outcome when Kevin Durant doesn't play, and the ball moves around a lot more. As Rudy said in his podcast when we were debating it, he said that the Warriors ran some incredible team ball in 2016 and KD kinda killed that when he joined the team. Durant is a bit of a ball stopper, he needs his isolations and post-ups and all of that. Hard to swing the ball around when you have that high profile of a scorer on your team. But that sacrifice is worth it to have one of the best scorers if not the best scorer in NBA history. And Curry and Klay playing better is really just a natural product of removing a guy from the team who takes 20 shots a game. It's not like those shots were gonna go to fucking Jonas Jerebko or Sean Livingston. If you need to distribute 20 more shots a game, those shots are gonna go to Curry and Klay. So they will put up more points, but it's only natural. Look at Chris Bosh. After scoring 16 points per game in the 2013-14 season, his averages bumped up to 21 points per game when LeBron James left the Heat. Chris Bosh didn't suddenly become a lot better at basketball in the offseason. He just averaged more points and more minutes because LeBron James was no longer there to average 17 shots a game. Bosh went from 12 field goal attempts to 17. Same shit happens with Curry and Klay. And let's look at the way that the Raptors have been defending Curry in particular. They have been throwing double after double at him. Curry has been scrambling this whole series, especially towards the end of Game 2, because after Klay went down, the defense had no one to worry about but Curry. Let's say that Kevin Durant, again, one of the greatest scorers of all time, is out there. The Curry double team doesn't happen much, if at all. It comes less and less, just like it came less before Klay Thompson went down. And a little side tangent here. The criticisms against Curry for scoring 0 points in the fourth quarter of Game 2 was really stupid. If you watched the game, you would know that there was little opportunity for Curry to score in the fourth because, like I said, constant double teams. Curry played well for the situation that he was in. If you want to criticize him for not scoring through double teams with no spacing, fine. Who am I to tell you not to look stupid? If Curry is out there with one of the greatest scorers of all time, he isn't facing double teams. Because he isn't the only guy that the defense has to worry about. Now let's say this is the 2016 Warriors with Kevin Durant slapped onto the roster and minus Harrison Barnes. If that was the case, I could see Durant being neither here nor there in terms of impact, because the Dubs were really deep in 2016, that whole strength in numbers slogan existed for a reason. Andre Iguodala off of the bench wasn't a shell of his former self yet, and he was actually one of the best 6 men in the game. Sean Livingston was a lot better than he is now. Festus Ezeli was weirdly good. Leandro Barbosa was a solid backup. Mo Buckets was nicknamed Mo fucking Buckets for a reason. Need I say more? Now the Warriors are rocking with a battered as shit DeMarcus Cousins, old and not nearly as good Sean Livingston, out of prime by a good margin Andre Iguodala, Quinn Cook, who I actually think is really underrated and should be getting more minutes than Sean Livingston, Jonas Jerebko, and Alfonso McKinney. Are these guys bad? No. But other than Andre Iguodala and Quinn Cook, are any of these guys getting big minutes, if any minutes at all, for the Toronto Raptors in this series? If Jonas Jerebko was on the Raptors, does he ever touch the floor? Or if he was on the 2016 Warriors, does he really play? Or Alfonso goddamn McKinney. This team's shooting is also ironically really awful. Jonas Jerebko is a shooter who can't really shoot. Despite hitting that 3 to seal the game, Andre Iguodala is not a good shooter. Sean Livingston doesn't even take threes. McKinney is essentially the same as Iggy with shooting. Quinn Cook is the only good shooter on this roster. Boogie is also okay, but not great, and you never know how much his injury is affecting his shot. Also, Iggy isn't even coming off of the bench anymore without Durant on the team. If this was the 2016 Warriors plus KD, they would be just fine without him. But the Warriors traded their depth for Kevin Durant, and that's a trade you're willing to make 9 times out of 9. But it's a Warriors team without any kind of depth. That trade-off doesn't work if Durant isn't playing. People tend to confuse Curry and Klay playing better and the Warriors moving the ball more for the Warriors playing better. In reality, the players are just forced to step up more. Yes, KD stops the ball. Yes, Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry play better. And yes, the ball moves around more when Durant isn't playing. But the unbeatability factor of the Golden State Warriors only exists with Kevin Durant. There's a reason everyone freaked out when Durant joined the Warriors. He makes them unbeatable. The reason the Raptors have a chance in this series is because KD hasn't played. It comes down to this. The Warriors, and especially Steph, could really use a scorer that the defense has to worry about. The lack of depth and spacing around Curry allows the defense to hone in on him. And most importantly, Kevin Durant being on the roster is the reason this team has been unbeatable for the last 3 years now. That unbeatability factor does not exist without him. And most importantly, if Kevin Durant doesn't make the Warriors better, then I'm probably gonna have to end my life. Check out Rudy's podcast. The link will be in the description. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.